So now I'll just open the scripts. Now on the script, let's first of all try what I've showed you before. Let's say we declare A as square brackets like this, and we declare B as curly bracket like this. Okay, so if we are to log both of them, let's say I log A as, let's say A, okay, then I log B as B, okay. So if I save this, refresh this, you're going to see that A is an array while B is an object. Okay, I didn't do anything, just the symbol I add attached to it like this now. Okay, just the symbols are attached to it. It's automatically changed the whole thing. Okay, so no, this is just in log, console.log. You can print multiple data. That's what's happened here. I can even add another thing again, comma. I can even print the B here itself. I just wanted to differentiate them. All the things you're printing, so before. So I just wanted to differentiate them. That's why I did this. Okay. So you see that A is an array, B is an object, only with these symbols. Okay. So like what I was telling you that if for instance we have this A which is an array now, let's say an array of age now, and you have multiple values like 0, 2, 4, 3, 9, 4, something like this. Okay. Now you have, if you print the A, let me print the A again. Okay, let's log A. Okay, so on logging A, sorry, age, sorry, we change variable to age. Okay, so say reference error A is not defined. Okay, so now look at what these are the elements of the array. I'm telling you that the array is of size 6. Look at the length here, it's telling you 6. Then the index from 0 to 5. Okay, so any one of them you want to access, you simply just put the number there. Okay, let's say you put the square bracket, then let's say you want to access number 5, which is the last one, so it will print 4 for you. Okay, so that is just an array. But in terms of objects, let's say we have user, just like what we have on the board now. Okay, so if we say we have a user like this, now the user will have to have, let's say, f name is, let's say, destiny. Okay, so the keys are just like variables. Declare them. Okay, and then I can say first name in full. Anyhow, I want to write it. Okay, I can say L name. Okay, L name. Then I can say James. Okay, then I can say age. Age can be an integer, 23. Then phone can be uh, let's say an array, just like what we have on the board, where the array will have different phone number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So let's say 080. Okay. So like this now. Okay. So with this now, I can simply say, okay, let me log the user. Okay. So if I log the entire user now, you see everything, objects, F name, this the last name, this age, this phone number two. If you expand it, you're going to see that the phone number is another array inside. Now, as simple as this thing may sound, it is very, very important you understand this because working with complex data later, or maybe you communicate with another system somewhere, let's say an API or what have you. Now, sometimes the data can be in form of this thing you see now. Now, how do you access them? That is the major thing. So in this period now, this period of our class now, the major thing you focus on is how you work with data structures and how those data can be managed. Okay. Now an object is one of the beautiful way in JavaScript that you can handle data of any type. Okay. Now what you're seeing now, you can see different data type. Okay. So, but using an object now, since it's an object, if I want to get any of this now, I just have to say dot. That means if I want to get the first name, I can say dot first name. Okay. So when I say it will just print destiny for me. Okay. So, but if I say dot phone now, okay, or if I say dot age now, to just print the age, which is an integer number for me. Okay. So, but if I say dot phone, and you've seen that the phone is an array, it's going to give you an array of phones. Okay. So if you open it, still tell you that the length is two and have zero index of 0 and 1. Okay. So anyone you want to print, you simply specify. So anyone you specify here is what will be printed for you. Okay. Yes, JavaScript is case sensitive. Okay. So that is that. So um, let's see users, for instance. Okay. So I'll simply use users. Okay. I'll say let users. Okay. Is equal to this. You understand what I did here? Let me make this one look more presentable. Okay. Like this. You can separate them like this. Just like the way you do your CSS. Your CSS is just like object too. So always end starts here, ends here. So every key and their value will be inside. Okay. Yeah. So if this is a user, then what do you think will be users? Users will be an array of objects. Okay. That means inside this array now, okay, we can have this object. Okay. We can have this object. Then after this object, okay, we can separate it with comma and have another object. That means we can have multiple objects. Okay. So if you see now, we're going to have, okay, sorry, I have to print it. So if we print this user that is an array of multiple objects, now that means each of this array now can be different people. Let's say this one can be Destiny Kingsley. Okay. This one can be James Bond. Okay. And this one is 21 years. Let's say this one is 43 years. Okay, so maybe this one have phone number of 88 here, and 99 here. This one have phone number of 41 here, and phone number of 3 here. Okay, so if you see this, if we log users now, users, you're going to see that we have array of users. So if you open it, each of them is an object. Each of them can be represented in an index because they are array. Now each of the array now will have objects that have keys. So all these things are things you need to be very, very careful with. You need to understand all this. Because sometimes if I make request to a particular URL now, for instance, if I make request to a particular URL now, let me try something. So now on this one now that we have our users, let's create a UI for them because this is the work of a front-end developer now. Front-end developer, you get data. Then when you get those data now, how you make use of them now is the work. It's not just designing the interface now. Now it's the actual front end now where you get data and use them. Okay. Now let's assume we want to display them in form of a card. Let me do a placeholder, a card placeholder. We have first name, last name. We have the age, then their phone number. Okay. So now if I go to my this, okay, let's say I have a div. Let me copy from the ones we've done before. I think index, we do anything on index. Okay. No, no, I don't need to use login. Let me use here now. I think that's something I have available already. Okay, so let me use a grid for instance. So I'll say dot grid, okay, dot grid hyphen colon 2, or let's say colon 3. Let's just use colon 2, okay. Dot, let's say we put colon 1, sorry. Then we'll have dot md colon 2, okay. Then we'll give it a gap of, let's say, 6, okay. So inside it we have two div because we said we need two columns. Okay, so the two div now, each of the div now represents a column. Now I'm more interested in this column. Now what we use this column for is to create a form. Okay, so I will simply call this one, let's say, form column. Okay, so then this one I'll call it user list or card, depending on the design we want to use. Okay, so now what I'll simply do here now, let me just use a simple list first. Okay, so let's say I have unordered list like this. Okay, so we have another list, and each of the ordered list is a list item. So inside the list item, let's assume we have a H1 that is of text, let's say Excel, and also of font bold. Okay, then we'll put, let's say, first name and last name. Okay, So let's see how it is here. So have this. Okay. So something is wrong. Grid columns. MD grid columns. Columns. This how it's supposed to be. And this guy is supposed to be this side. Okay. Yes. Because this first column will be here. So let's make this guy look like a card. So give the class of, let's say, we change the BG color a little bit. Let's say gray 100. Okay. Then we say rounded, LG. Okay. Then we'll put a little shadow on it. Okay. So let's see how it looks like. Okay. Something like this. So we can also add it a little bit. Let's say padding X of 4 and padding Y of 2. Okay, so looking at this, we have this card. Okay, then if that is the first name, so I'm not really doing any design. I just want to illustrate how the whole thing. So I'll design one of these as a placeholder. Then we'll now use it to get the array of users. Okay, so now if this one is the H1, which have the first name and the last name, then we need the phone number of the user. Okay, so we can simply say, okay, let's change this age. Okay, let's change this age of the users to something like email. Okay, so let's say email. Okay, so now that we have uh, email, let's say this one is destiny j at uh, gmail.com. Okay, so I know if it's an email, you have to be in form of string. So this one too, we have to string it. Let's say this one is uh, let's say the Kingsley. Why this one? Let's say this guy is James Bond. Okay, so I would say this guy is James Bond at gmail.com. Okay, so now for our placeholder here, we'll now have something under it, under the first name and last name. Let's say we'll have uh, a small. Okay, let's say we have a small. Inside the small, we have an emphasis. That's it will be italic. Okay, then we have, let's use the James Bond as example. James Bond at gmail.com. Okay, so with this, you're going to see it like this. Okay, then we now access the phone numbers. Okay, so now we can put the numbers. Let's say the number also be small. Let's say 090 blah, 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 blah. Okay, then we now say comma 080 blah, 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 blah. So let's just assume this is how each of the card will look like. Okay, this one is supposed to be under. Okay, so what we're going to do here now is we're not going to use small, because small is inline, or even though we're using small, we have to make it block. Okay, you can just, instead of, yes, you can just give it a CSS, a tailwind class of block. Okay, so it will fall down. Okay, so now what I want to do is here I have to give this one a class too of font semi-bold. Okay, so semi-bold. Then I have to give it a text gray of 800 so that it will not be complete dark. Okay, so let's assume this is what we need. So, but each of the user that we get now will not have to put their details like this. Okay, so that means that we have another list of this nature. Okay, we're going to have two lists like this. We have to put margin bottom, or we make this uh, parent. Let's just put margin bottom. Okay, MB2. Okay, or let's say 3. This one will be MB3 too. Okay, so with this we'll have a space. So this one will be like list of users. Okay, now this is dummy content now. Now let's make use of the array of users we have from our JavaScript now. Now for us to loop through an array of users, we can use a for loop. Okay, we can use a for loop. Now using a for loop, we can also use a for each loop. Okay, it's up to you. Okay, now for each loop is easier for such kind of issues, such kind of things like this. Using it for each loop is easier. But uh, I would like to use for loop here. Then subsequently, we're going to use it for each loop. Okay. So if we want to do a for loop here now, our for loop will be for, okay, for I. Okay, let's use I as our counter. Now, what we say for I is equal to when, to which, to where rather, to which number we want to count to. That is the question. Which number do we want to count to? We don't know. You understand? So we have to find what is the length of that array. Our array now is users. So we have to say users dot length, because if we log users dot length here, if we say, for instance, we say users dot length here. Okay, if you check your log, it's going to give you the length of the user, which is 3. Okay, so using it in the for loop is simply telling it as, okay, so as long as I is less than 3, you know it will start from 0. That means if it's less than 3, that means it's 2. You understand? That means anytime you increase the users, automatically this guy will increase. You understand? So for I, it starts from 0. As long as it's less than the length of users, I plus plus. So for each of these guy now, if you want to print any of these guy now, if you say log users, okay, then we put I here now, for instance. That means for each loop, it's going to print the user. Sorry, there's something I did now. Users, okay, users. That's our array, okay. So you see, it printed them separately, three of them. Understand? So what we're going to do now is not to print them on our console. Use one of these cards to print them. Okay? So for us to use one of those cards to print them now, what we're going to do is we'll first of all declare a variable that will hold them. Okay? So let's say uh, declare a variable to hold them, to hold the the lists of users. Okay, the list of users. Okay, so we simply say let list, let's call it list. Okay, that user list is equal to an empty string. Okay, it will be an empty string to start with. Okay, now for each of this loop now, let it accumulate. That is list plus equal to. I hope you know what plus equal to is. Is the same thing as list equals list plus, okay, list plus then a let's say I use this quote. This is not normal quote, so it's the one on top of before your one here. Okay. Now the reason why I use this type of quote is within it I can place a variable. If I use the normal quote, which is this quote, I cannot place a variable inside of this guy. Okay, then apart from that too, this one can span multi lines because this is what we are trying to do. Each of the lists now. Okay, so I want to put this guy inside. So you see I have a lot of error because it cannot span across multiple lines. But assuming I use this one here, okay, this one can span even to the bottom here. Now you can see. So until I end it here, okay, so this one can span multiple lines. So with this now, you'll find out that every time the loop iterates, it will accumulate a list to itself. Okay, that's what it means. This one is same thing as plus equal to. Okay, plus equal to, that means accumulate this list into this variable. Okay, so with this now, what we need to do is to give this another list. Since we don't want, this one is a dummy, just a placeholder, so we don't really need it here. What we actually need is we want to print it inside, we want to put it inside it, so we give this an ID. Let's call it user list. Okay, okay, users list. Okay, so this ul now, I gave it an ID of users list. So when I give it an ID of users list, now what I will now do is I will now come here after the loop. Okay, I will now say document, okay, dot get element by id. Okay, now the id is user list. Okay, now what I want to print now is the dot html, that means inner html rather. Okay, because I want to, this thing now consists of html, so I want to print the whole html now inside it, so I'll assign the ulist into it. And that will show. Yeah, it's inside script now. Inner html now, you're supposed to know what inner html is now. That is, I want to put it as the inner HTML of this UL. That's what it means. So JavaScript now will accumulate the whole list and place it inside this guy. Yes, that is it. Okay. So if we refresh our page now, we have a list of 3 users. but it's still the dummy because we've not put the details. So now we'll have to come here and ask, okay, what are the details now? The first one is the first name of the user. Okay, so now how do we get the first name of the user? Okay, so we simply say uh, in the current user, okay, in the current user, who's okay. First of all, if I want to print a variable, okay, let's say for instance, let me remove this whole thing. Let's say for instance, I want to print a variable, this variable I inside this string now. Okay, so I'll simply use dollar and two curly braces like this. So if I say I here, which is a variable that's looping, it will print all the I, it will print the indexes. You understand? So, but the major thing we want to print is not even that one. Okay, what we want to print is each of these guys. Now, how do we notice each of these guys now? We have to say, okay, this user, this particular user in this index I, okay, this user in that particular index, okay. Now we want to get the first name, that's the F name of that person, okay. So with this now, it will print all their first name for you, okay. Same thing applies. Same thing applies to last name. So I'll just copy this, give a space, paste this. Now say I want the L name to be here. Sorry. Yes, I want the L name to be here. So with this, I'll have both the first name and last name of each of these user. Okay. So same thing applies to the email. So I'll simply just paste it here. I say I need the email. Okay. So each of them will now print their email for us. It's as simple as that. Okay. So with this, for the phone number, since it's an array, we can also do. Okay. Now let me show you something else here now. Okay. Let me show you something else here now. Yeah, I can still print. I will comment something here. Okay. I can print something like this. I cannot comment on this guy. Okay. I'll print something like this now. I'll say phone number. Okay. Then phone now, I have to specify whether 0 or 1, right? Okay. So I'll print now is printing phone number 1. Yes. Okay. Yes, you can still print two of them by saying comma. Okay. Say comma. Then you print the last one. Okay. Okay. Now I want to show you something else here in this array. In this phone number array. Okay. Now instead of using for loop like this, I can still use like the for each loop, like I told you. Okay, because you know where we have problem here now is since this guy is an array, we can still loop it. Okay, because what about in the case that this person have only one phone number? It's possible, right? And this person might have three phone numbers. This person might have three phone numbers. You understand? So how do you know? You get, because this is not regular data now. So in this case now, the for each loop is more better to use. But to use the for each loop inside here now might be kind of difficult for us. So what I'm going to do is inside this loop, let's get the phone number and use the for each on it. Okay. So I'll simply say, since the phone number is an array, now I'll say this array dot for each. Okay. Now for each, I call a variable. Let me just call the variable name phone number. Or let me use normal. Yeah, I showed you exis function already. So if I do exis here, you know if exis, right? So let's call it phone number. Okay, phone. Then we open a function like this. Okay. Now for each of the phone number, what we want to do is, let's say I have a variable, a variable, let's say phones. Sorry, let's okay, phones. Okay, let phones is equal to an empty array, an empty string rather. Okay, so now if it's an empty string, then here now for each of these phone number, okay, I'm going to accumulate just the way I accumulated this guy now, plus equals, but this time around I'm accumulating the phone of that person. Okay, so I will simply say phones, okay, phones, okay, plus equal to equals to this phone of this person. Okay, so plus equals to, so here now, instead of printing this, okay, I can just print phones. Okay, I just print phones. So this loop now, this for each loop now will automatically look how many phone you have and print them here. So if you have one phone to be there, something like that. But we'll still have a little problem. But let's see how it goes first. So like this now, like this guy have two phones. Yeah, I have two phones. Yes, I know that's the problem I said we were going to have. I thought I removed one phone from this guy. Destiny James is supposed to have one phone number. Uh, these two. How come? Let me see. I removed it. So 090 090 080 080. Okay, I removed it from this one. Don't mind me. Okay, so uh, uh, so you see this guy have one, this guy have two. So you don't have issues of counting how many phone number you have and you know. So see how this guy is now. For each loop is kind of easier and you just tell you. So the only thing we're not going to do here now is we're going to have to check the index too. Because if we say, okay, let's add the space manually, so it's possible we can add it manually. Like for instance, I can say uh, space, okay, plus phone, like this, okay. It will have space between them, okay. But what I'm trying to say now is, let's say comma. That's where the problem is now. So you have to think of a proper logic to do this because if I put comma here now, it will even the comma will be appended to even this one that is starting. You understand? uh So and we say if we put it at the end, even this one now will not have comma at the end. So we have to check the index of that array before we put comma. So sorry. But this though those ones are just logic. The major thing if you understand how this data are being used. You understand? Yes. Yes, I can use for each in place of this four. Instead of using this four, I can use for each one side. Yes. I'm just what I'm doing now is yes, it's very, very appropriate for something like this. Okay, but what I'm doing now, since we are learning, you are testing this and testing this. Okay. So now for us to put this append this guy, okay, we're going to simply do an if statement. Okay. Now I'll simply say if s here. Okay. Now the if s will be that if the index That means we need an index. So we can simply say comma I here. Okay. Okay, this might conflict with this our I. So because of conflicting, let's change the variable. Let's use J, or let's use X, or which variable will be proper? Let's say A, or let me just write in full index. Okay, remember this is a loop. Okay, so this index now will count. It will display the index. For instance, if I log each of these index now, you see it's going to print from uh, 0 to whatever value you have. Okay, so if I refresh this, sorry, condition is not defined. Okay, sorry, let me comment this guy first. Okay, so if I comment this guy, I refresh this, you see that it's counting the indexes. Okay, so since it's counting the indexes, now what we're going to do here now is we can use this index now to determine if it's the first value. Okay, so we'll simply say if index is equal to 0, that means that is the first value. So if it's the first value, we don't need to add the comma to it or space. Okay, so if it's the first value, okay, we'll simply say plus equals phone, like this. Okay, else then we add a comma to it if it's not the first value. You understand? It's just a simple logic. Okay, as long as it's not the first value, add comma. That means there's something before. So with this, we have comma in those ones. So that is it.